Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for joining us today. So, before we dive into the session, a quick intro. Myself, Muhammed Fuwad, a product designer based in Kozhikode, India, and I'm community leader of Friends of Figma Kozhikode. And here we have Michelle and Hafiz as well, the co-organizers of FF Kozhikode. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker. So, here we have Ms. Charu Choudha, the senior product design manager at Microsoft. And so this event is FF World Tour 2025. Actually, this event is actually the slide is changing, right? So FF World Tour is a 24-hour non-stop virtual celebration of the Friends of Figma community globally. Each participating FF chapter hosts its own 1 hour session with local speakers. It truly shows what we can achieve together. So here we have Choudha, the senior design manager at Microsoft, and I am handing this session over to her. Hi, Charu.
Hey, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Great. Thanks for the intro and thank you for joining. So today I want to deep dive into a topic which is something I've written from my experience of being a product designer in the industry for a couple of years. And this is just based on what I believe or I have realized that how as a product designer we there are a lot more than the skills we already have, but there is a lot of shift in your mindset that is required to take a product to its success, and that is what I'm going to deep dive into today. So, as a product designer, what do we really do? If you have to summarize it, what are our responsibilities, or what are we contributing to product, right? Like, so what can you think of? You can think of we are responsible for gathering user needs, translating it into product vision, understanding our users, empathizing with them, creating, of course, deliverables like prototype, a user flow, brainstorming and ideating ideas with your team, right? Like these are pretty much what we think of when we think of the role of a product designer in a product team, right? And I'm sure we all are aware of a lot of terms here. Um, but what's beyond that? When you actually work in a product team, do you feel this is sufficient? Do you think that as a product designer who's, say, leading the design strategy of any product, be it consumer, enterprise, or any domain, but do you think these skills are enough to contribute to product success? That is one question I want you to take back, and we'll deep dive into this further, but I want you to take a minute and think about it. And meanwhile you think about it, I already I mean, already there was an introduction, but I'll quickly just talk about some of the background of my work I've done. So currently I work at Microsoft, as already mentioned, and previously I was also working with Google and Zomato. So this slide is a bit old, but now I think totally I have around 11 years of experience. Zomato, for people who are not aware, is a small, I mean, it used to be a small startup when I joined 2015, really focused around food delivery and restaurant finding experiences. So as a product designer, when I joined, we built a lot of interesting products. One of that was Zomato Gold, which maybe some of you might have heard of or used, which was like a subscription plan for foodies. It was very new of its kind, and I designed the first version of it. when we launched it very quickly, we got a lot of feedback. We sold around a lakh subscriptions in like a couple of months, which was a success for the product. Also did a couple of redesign of the Zomato main app. I for some time I joined Google in the middle, where I was a part of an incubation team. We were building a new age business intelligence software, and it was a 0 to 1 kind of product. And here in Microsoft, I have had the opportunity, and I've been grateful that I got to work on a lot of 0 to 1 stage of products. We A couple of years back worked on Microsoft Office app, where we designed it from the scratch from our team in Hyderabad. And nowadays we're working on M365 Copilot app. And yeah, when we launched it, we had a lot of like rethinking and revisions of what really this app should look like. And as you can understand, in the 0 to 1 stage of a product, you have a vision, but you're constantly questioning it, right? So what really happened in these years, of course, I was fortunate enough to work on these interesting product areas, but I also discovered what my own interest is as a product designer. It's such a broad field, and when you get into it, you can get to work on different domains. Of course, consumer enterprise and a lot of other things, right? So I've realized that I'm very much interested in products which are getting built from scratch, where I feel there's a lot of scope to contribute and to influence product strategy and overall business. So I realized that I'm mostly interested in those kind of products, and unfortunately I get those opportunities, and if not, I try to seek such opportunities. But I think as a product designer, I believe everyone should kind of question what really they are interested in, so that they can kind of contribute honestly and the best they can. The other thing I am also very interested in is just generally contributing to design education, and connecting with younger folks who are new to the industry. So that is a little bit about me. Going back to the initial question I left you with, feel free to drop in your thoughts in comments. But so, what happens in real life? I'm sure a lot of you are experienced in product design teams. So, you would definitely agree with me that those skills which I shared, they are not enough. There is, I mean, of course, there's communication skills and there's soft skills, etc. But that is not enough, right? As a product designer, you also need to have a mindset uh, which is needed to take your product to success. So I was couple of years back. I was reflecting on this, and I wrote a small post on social media, which got a lot of attention. And I didn't. I mean, I just posted it, but I later realized that this is something which people or which design community, and not just design community, but product makers can connect with. And today I want to talk more about what are these mindset shifts that I learned over the years. So, firstly, talking about what our focus is as product designers, we generally quantify our success based on the outputs, based on, say, here are 10 Figma mockups I created, or a prototype I created and I gave to my dev, or I presented this to my leadership. And that is pretty much how we kind of look back at what we have done in our teams, in our companies. And that is how we try to kind of evaluate if we did a good job or not, right? So what I realized, that is what I started my career with. But eventually I learned that um, not really output is always the metric that we should go after as designers. Our success metric should align with the product strategy. So at times, in initial years, where we had to really write our OKRs and then kind of like look back at them. So I used to be very output oriented, but eventually those OKRs became more, you can say, more or less similar to what OKR a product manager would have. Probably like think about similar success metrics, but how can I contribute from an experience point of view, or how can I bring a user perspective, but that ultimately contributes to the business success. So I started becoming more outcome oriented, and for this I definitely had to educate myself, and as I think designers we should. I mean, of course, I think the times are changing, and I'm seeing more and more designers being more aware and educated about metrics, and just like trying to understand the business aspect a bit better. So, for example, a lot of companies use this ARRR metric for tracking what stage the customer is in and what are the kind of challenges that they need to solve, and of course look at data and learn from that. So I think eventually my focus really shifted towards learning from these metrics and really focusing on, at every stage of experience, how can I contribute, with from experience point of view, how can I contribute something, or how can I change something that will enhance the user experience, right? So I looked up one of the examples, and I found this to be a very interesting example, really old, but I think there's a lot to like learn from how LinkedIn changed their experience or focused on doing things which will enable users at different stages of product. So for example, this is an experience they introduced back in 2006 when it was not very common. So this is designed specially for users who are in the acquisition stage. So they had a feature called recommendation, and people you may know, now we see it everywhere, but it was new back then. And what happened was it showed up when you sign in. So at that moment, LinkedIn, through the data they have, they will pop up all the people you know at work, and instantly they acquire user, because adding people was as easy as just checking the boxes. And for a person who's new to a platform, just seeing those familiar places, familiar faces, made them. I mean, they instantly want trust of those people, right? So they immediately converted into acquired users. Another example was when they know that the user is already acquired, but say they kind of stop using the platform or are not very active, they try different strategies. So one good example was what they did was kind of share these emails in the people who they want to retain, and the emails would have interesting data points like, say, how many people viewed your profile. Now that will increase the curiosity. And also the data showed that these emails had 20% CTR for active users and 5% for inactive users, which was actually a very good, I mean, successful metric if you look at it, because 20% people opened this and went back to the platform. So as a designer, this might not be like something very new, but it's very thoughtful and it aligns with the product strategy. So at times we have to step out of our say product platforms as well and look at what else can we do, right? So that was one of the first mindset shifts which I believed was very helpful. When I started doing it other way, I realized instantly my team noticed, and kind of became like an expectation that I would come and contribute to a product, not just as a designer, but really wear the business hat and understand and contribute from experience perspective. But it takes the product towards success. um, so that was one. The second thing which I also thought a lot about is how do you balance between innovation and doing your day-to-day job or doing your say day-to-day delivery work, right? Because as designers, what I learned doing a lot of 0 to 1 products, what I learned was you need to have a vision of what's going to come next. At times you would see that uh, even business cannot have that vision, because product designers are well equipped, as we know, with like all the tools and all the kind of creativity we have. We are mostly well equipped, and we also have that touch point with our audience. We connect with them, we empathize with them. So definitely we are at a spot where we can um, say really uh, have a forward looking vision, which probably others in the team cannot have. But as we know that we also have to do everything that is the bread and butter of the product, right? So how do we balance between these two? So I later, I think after doing a lot of 0 to 1 kind of products, what I learned was that as a designer I should always try and kind of manage 2 tracks, and as much as possible I should communicate this to my stakeholders, my managers or leadership, right? So what are these 2 tracks? So the 2 tracks will be, firstly of course, the delivery track. And the delivery track is really what your product team is waiting for. Say they have given you a PRD and you have to like say design all these mocks and give it to them, or whatever handoff you're doing with the engineering, whatever presentations you've been asked to kind of deliver, right? So these are your day to day activities which you cannot pause. But at the same time we need to carve out some time and some mental bandwidth for discovery phase. So what is discovery phase? It could be leading by research, it could be really looking at the current experience or looking at the competitors out there and learning from them, or maybe just just educating yourself about what are the trends, what are the industry trends, right? Like for example with AI, how can you wear that discovery hat and look at what's happening in futuristic say products, startups, what are they doing, and how can you bring that knowledge back to your product team, right? So discovery hat can have multiple kind of things you can do, but mainly the idea is how do you bring those user insights, maybe create a future vision, and probably come up with potential experimentation ideas. But maybe you as a designer has have to drive it. It is what really innovation is, right? And slowly and gradually you'll educate your stakeholders and team members and get them enrolled. But as a designer we should be driving these kind of discovery exercises, right? So that is the other thing which I learned, and now I practice this in a way that I kind of communicate it to my stakeholders, and in fact I suggest everyone in the team to do so. Now, for a very well established product, it might look different. For a 0 to 1 stage product, this might completely look different. But there has to be a track where you can think about innovation. Um, so, the third mindset shift, which I also learned over the years, was how do you bring influence to the product strategy? So, I talked about it a bit in the early slides, but really, business generally have OKRs. They sometimes have vision, but as a product designer, we need to translate that vision into really an experience vision and show. Sometimes it also comes down, like especially like say in Microsoft, it's a huge company and we have multiple stakeholders. So at times we have to really show our stakeholders or leadership on how what we are kind of like designing is connected to the global vision. So at times, because what happens is people lose focus. So when you're trying to say enroll a team of leadership team, or like say a couple of stakeholders, as I mean, as we know, as product designers, it's not just designing in silos, right? We have to get buy-ins from everyone, and you are working with your PM, of course. But how do you as a designer use your strengths to enroll these stakeholders, right? So what we try to do is, always when you're presenting your idea, especially with leadership or where you know that their critical decisions will be made, in such cases always try and connect, say whatever ideas you have, connect it to the original vision and show it to your team, so that you get easy alignment. Because for us, in bigger companies and bigger teams, this becomes very crucial onto like how do you get alignments, right? um so that's, I think, yeah, that is one approach which I tried and experimented in various ways. But broadly I felt like this as a principle is important, that how do I kind of, as a designer, also not just align these align all the stakeholders, but also how do I make contribution in roadmaps. Say like how can I bring insights on what will be the low effort high impact kind of solution or feature that we should go after, right? So these are the kind of insights that designers are uniquely placed to bring. One example of this was that this one slide we generally try and have in a lot of my presentations, where I kind of like try to have a plan of action. uh, kind of show that how there was a product vision, then there are these high level themes we came up with, and then of course like whatever the feature or components are there in the product, then cut down to specs, features, and really prototype. And then once your audience understands that how you have gone about this process of thinking about this product, they'll be more curious to see what you have designed, right? So there will be more empathy or more understanding of what the background thinking has been. So always try to do that to get easy alignment and enrollment from leadership. um, yeah, the fourth point, which I also wanted to talk about, which we've been doing, and probably you've also been doing in your organizations, but at all the places I worked, be it startup like Zomato or Google or Microsoft, one thing I try to do, if there is a research counterpart part, work with them. If not, but try to kind of like set up a cadence for user validation. Earlier we used to kind of do user sessions once in a while and really plan for it and then organize it. But what we realized later on, when you go about it in such a planned way, often you become very attached to the idea which you are going to test. And then you want to perfect it and really wait for the right time or go for the like right experience and show it to users. So you become more and more attached as product makers. But that's exactly opposite of what user validation should do, right? User validation should ideally help you test your ideas quickly. So what we started doing was just marking the calendar with like few hours of user testing regularly, and bring engineering, PM, and whoever your stakeholders are, bring everyone in the room, or at least like optionally add them, so they, if they have they are interested, they can join and understand and really test whatever you have. So every week we would try to kind of test, even if we have wireframes, we would go with that. We have static screens, we would go with that. If we have prototypes, great, then we would test that. But what it really helped us is that we stop becoming overly attached to particular ideas, which tend to happen, it's very natural, right? But we became more intentional in terms of really understanding the goal of this user testing, right? Like for example, if we are testing a couple of prototypes, we would not be too attached or we would not have a lot of preferences. But what we would try to do is understand the hypothesis which we have behind these prototypes and test that. So, as a process, when we brought user validation in a regular cadence, it completely changed everyone's perspective. So, that is another thing which I learned. over the years. So yeah, one example was that we did that in in Zomato. So Zomato had a lot of urban India as their user persona which they targeted. And we used to kind of back then, few years back then, like 10 years back, we didn't do all of these things online, right? So we would have every week couple of like top Zomato users coming in the office, and we would like show these prototypes to them, or whatever we had back then we would show and test. And this is something I learned there, and I have been very religiously doing this in all my teams with all the products, and it has always worked well. So just in case you're not doing it, I would suggest try it out. Fifth, which we often talk about a lot, is how to educate your team on design maturity, which I think is changing with time. But as a product designer, our role is also to educate all the product people about understanding, integrating design into the process as well as strategy. So, what happens often, like, although things are changing, but a lot of times we come across these people who just look at design as, say, decoration, and they would ask you to just make this screen look beautiful, or just like create this user flow. So for those people, firstly, it might feel offensive, but at the same time we should understand and empathize, because they are probably not aware of what design's role is in product. We as product designers need to educate these people, right? So um, as a organization grows, I found this diagram online, and I thought it's so well designed, right? As organization grows in terms of design maturity, so probably they'll be in a state of no design at all, and they'll move on to considering design as styling and decoration, to moving on to design as process. And finally, the most mature companies look at design as strategy. So I have seen this shift in Microsoft when I joined 7 years back. I saw Microsoft say treating design as styling. That was the kind of maturity. A lot of product managers would like come up to designers and just ask for like making things look beautiful, right? But over the years, if you see the products, I mean, we are kind of launching with, even with Copilot and everything, you would see that design has been playing a key role in really strategizing on what business should be doing. um, uh, and this is not just something that has changed rapidly, but gradually over the time this has happened, because as designers, something what we I saw that here designers contributions is not just limited to product, but I also in Google, I learned that there was a lot of kind of talk about how do you educate your team more into like understanding what design's role is, right? So there was just a lot of communication around that we had to bring in the table. One example was like these kind of different sessions, workshops we keep doing in the company, um, which are generally open to everyone, to understand things like, say, UX writing, prototyping, and just like, say, understanding vision, etc. So just like have these more and more educational sessions for your team. Also always kind of consider that, call out how design brought, drove the strategy for, say, if you have some case studies, if you have some examples from outside, share that with your team. So a lot of, I think, education really helped in changing that perspective, but definitely happened over the years, not something that happened at a snap. But it has definitely made our job easier and given us the power we felt like we always felt like we were missing, and made designers feel more empowered to speak up, to bring ideas and vision to businesses which they probably never thought of. And finally, the last important bit, which I also learned, that it's not just about delivering, but also at the time of delivery, really assessing what all the risks you have with this, whatever you have designed. Not just at the time of delivery, I mean entirely, right? Now, what are the risks generally attached to product features, right? It could be of three kinds. It could be feasibility risk, like you spoke to engineering early on, which I have always been doing, and that has always benefited. So you can understand the feasibility limitations, timeline limitations, bandwidth limitations, etc. Usability risk, that if say you focus on this one feature a lot, will that other feature suffer? Will this cause some sort of problems to for users? And then finally, value risk. So after doing all this, will it be valuable for the business or not? So at times we cannot answer all of these questions, but that is where partnership plays a very important role. So partnering with your PM or engineering counterpart and really understanding these have always helped me. One of the things we also do as a team is do like these experience reviews. So this is one example of how we assess the risk. So what we do is we list down all the user jobs or jobs to be done, whatever you call it in your company, and with say whatever feature we are going to launch. Once it is reached a stage where it is developed and it is ready to be shipped, we take a step back and we call everyone in the room. We have this meeting, which is almost become a standard process in Microsoft, which we called experience reviews. And it's not just for designers, it's for all the product team, for PMs, for engineering, for leadership, to come in and just test out the product based on these user jobs. And then after that, we ask them to rate the product experience, and rate on based on all these different categories, be it visual design, structure design, architecture of IEAs and architectures, requirements and foundations. So basically, just look across, and we are very open minded as product makers. If say it's something I worked on, I'll call the entire team, but I'll be very neutral and open minded, and push them to really honestly rate it without being bringing any bias, and then really make the call to that, are we ship ready, or do we need to take some time and really figure out if there are some major issues, if there are some technical bugs, or if even if at times it has happened that we felt that the hypothesis we had while we designed this is somewhere getting lost and it's not translating into the experience, and we have taken that feature back. I mean, we have not shipped it, and we have completely gone back to the to the pen and paper and like redesign and rethought about it completely. So this is something as a process we have established over time, learned from a lot of other teams and other companies. They have their own ways of doing it, but this is what we do here, but has always really helped in taking a step back and ensuring that we are not going with any risks, or at least I mean, having that common understanding within the team that this is the risk we have. So with that, I think my time is also over, and that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this session. If you have any questions, we can take them up, or else feel free to reach out to me separately as well. So thanks everyone. I'll hand it back to Fuwad. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. So please feel free to bring up any questions. And over to Fuwad.
Okay, thank you, Charu. The session was great. So, if any participants have any questions to ask her, please put it in the Q&A section, please. So, Charu, we have two questions as of now. So, can you see the questions?
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so first one is what's your LinkedIn? So let me share that. Yeah. Um, yeah. Second is how to deal with business teams. I think I did cover that a lot, but if you're new, if you're someone who's new to product design and you're working with product managers for the first time, I think being very open minded helps. So initially what they would ask, whatever they ask you to do, I would say maybe do it for some time, but then um, I think eventually you'll figure out. Be open to learning, like I mentioned about the matrix. So be open to learning these new terms which probably have not heard of, like success metrics, product metrics, data dashboards, etc. So I think really diving deep into um, what they do, and probably even like e- educating them on what you do, right? So I think if you work hand in hand, it gets easier with time.
Uh,
So
s-
yeah.
so, hi, Charu. Can you please check the Q&A session? There's a section called Q&A. Like people are posting the questions there.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I covered the first one. So I'll take the second one. The main thing which I observe is the entry barrier for freshers like us to get the design roles. Can you tell us how to get into the roles? I think, yeah, over time this has become a little more difficult. Definitely having a strong portfolio helps. And not just portfolio, like really having examples of what real life problems you have solved. Some, even like say if you've not worked for a company and you never got that opportunity, just going out and like figuring out, say there is a problem in your society, and say you built a product or you designed something which you felt like, I mean, after talking to users you felt like this will solve that problem, right? Like even these kind of case studies really help. So wherever you can show that you have the ability to solve problems, I think that is the key. And of course, um, that will help in kind of getting through these barriers. So I hope that helps. The next question is, how can I start introducing some maturity on my team as a junior UX designer? So yeah, very interesting question. I think I spoke about couple of things we do, but I think generally just sharing, like having educational sessions, sending out newsletters, and case studies or any material to read, just like educating. I mean, being really, I mean, don't think about like are people even reading things you're sharing or not, but just share out more. Eventually, you'll learn that yeah, people actually look at what you're sharing, right? And just find out these examples, whatever is happening in the industry, where design is really driving the way forward, or kind of have these case studies, have those educational sessions on, even call the team on for brainstorming sessions. So these are the things we have been doing over the time. It has really helped in, um, I mean, nowadays it has become like team cannot work without designers, because designers would like bring all of this which none of the other roles would do, right? So sometimes these kind of things would help. um, so the next question is, how do research in weekly sprints when time is very minimal, like finding user pinpointing, validation, etc. So I know like time, even if it is minimal, I think you should initially, when you're planning the roadmap, or when you have those discussions where you are aligning on timelines with your PMs, engineering, right? So I think at that time you need to calculate, you need to put your foot down that we need this time for user validation. You might get a lot of pushback, but I think that is where you cannot compromise on. Of course, like if it's say weekly it doesn't work, you can have something fortnightly, or I mean you can of course kind of like plan the frequency according to your team and your work. But definitely I mean consider this in the planning stage itself, so it will help. um yeah, I have another question. So in big companies with tight deadlines and strict processes, how do we create a space for designers to explore ideas without compromising their creative freedom within these constraints? So I think one of the strategies I already talked about kind of answers this, where I spoke about like having two work streams. Have a delivery work stream where you're doing everything the product needs you to do, whatever is the bread and butter for you and your product team. But at the same time have the discovery work stream where you have that kind of completely say kind of like freedom to explore, to ideate, to learn from industry trends and learn from what competition is doing, what user needs. So I think having those two separate work streams do help. Eventually your goal is always to bring the discovery, whatever you have explored in the discovery stage, to bring it into delivery. But that will eventually happen. But as a designer you should plan your work stream like that. um, so how early do you involve users in the design process at Microsoft? So as I mentioned, we involve them pretty early. We have these user validation sessions. I mean, the day we start working on product concepts, and we have those in most teams we do that. It's not a standard process, but it's just what is working for most of the teams where I worked in. So we bring them in initially, only test whatever we have, even if it's not built, it's just on Figma, we would go and test. um, so the next question is, what are the crucial metrics for UX designers you should focus on? So I think this is something which is very I mean dependent on what product you are designing, and I would maybe not be the best person to answer that, but maybe work with your product manager, who would be able to kind of help you with that and be open to learn, is what I've understood. um yeah, so the next question I was, you mentioned validating as early as sketches, which I find interesting. How do you approach validating sketches? I often feel like I'm the only one who can make sense of mine. Haha. Yeah, that's true. um but we have actually many a times validated just sketches, and surprisingly people do understand. Like if you get users who are say using products of similar competition or similar kind, I think if you get like slightly digitally savvy kind of users, it's I mean more or less it will work. So it's not, and as I said, like since you have weekly or you will have this regular rhythm, you always have the opportunity to again go back and test them. So it's not like you're just doing it for once and for all, right? So that is what we try to do. um okay, i'll take I'll take two more questions. So how are you incorporating AI into your workflow, and is there any change in how to measure the design impact with in AI era? So I'm sure this is a completely different subject and session, and I'm sure there must be more sessions around this. But um, I think AI is like integrated in every step now of design process. And I don't think the impact changes. The design impact still remains the same. It's just maybe I think the quality of everything we are doing is becoming better. Just to like say it in short, but I think this is a whole different subject which we'll like have to talk about again. But um, yeah, I mean, I'm also like just getting more upskilled and learning every day about new tools and new things you can do with AI. So we're in the same boat. Um, I'll take one more. Mm. So, what's your opinion on changing in industry trends? Like now it's going into like a gradient phase and more 3D and interactive designs are coming. And after years, may go back to abstract. What's your take on this? So I would say that this is very subjective. Um, I don't think you should like, of course, being updated and knowing what is the trend out there helps so that you can bring it to your product. But I think at the end of the day, just be open to whatever comes. Sometimes you can even lead the way with AI. I mean, you can bring in a completely new visual design style, and we know a lot about like generative UI that is also coming up, right? So there'll be definitely a lot of changes. So I think experimenting, if you have the scope, that's great. If not, just being aware is good. I don't have a like specific opinion on what will happen, what won't, but I'm sure that these visual design trends will also become more AI generated, instead of like really making those design systems, etc. It will all become more AI generated for sure. Um, so I think I'll take one last again. So I have one more question, which um, so I think okay. I think we covered all because there were some. Yeah, okay. I'll take one last. Hi Charu, what's your favorite method for testing early stage designs? I'm curious how you approach feedback from both known users and unknown users. How do you strike a balance between the two, especially during the early stages of product discovery? Very interesting question. So yeah, I think having a strong hypothesis on what you want to test before even going for validation helps. So, say, like, if you want to just test with new users, and your hypothesis is that this will turn them into acquired users, whatever like problem you're fixing, then you just focus on that, right? So I think having a strong hypothesis and a success metric really helps when you are going for these user validation sessions, because when you talk to these users, they might give you a lot of feedback, and some of it probably doesn't make sense for you at the moment. Maybe in future you might pick that feedback up back again, but at times, like, whatever is important to you, they maybe don't talk too much about it, right? So you'll have to guide them in the sense of, if you have clarity, if your team has clarity on what do we want to get out, what are the major questions we want to get answered, what is the major hypothesis we want to test, so then it becomes easier. So I mean, having that clarity would be great. So I think with this we can close our Q&A, and I hope have answered most of the questions. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. Over to Fuwad.
So thank you, Choudha. Like one more thing, we have a surprise waiting for all of you. Like we have a gift card of $50, and it will be awarded to the one question which Charu picks. Over to you, Charu. Which was the question which excited you the most?
Um, there were many. I can't see all of them now, but let me go back and just see.
Sure.
I think this was very thoughtful. The one asked by Radha Vaishnav, on how to approach user feedback for both internal and external users, and how do you strike the balance in an early stage of product delivery. So I
Mhm.
think this one would be the one I would want to nominate.
So congrats, Radha. So you have won a $50 coupon on Figma store, and you can redeem it later. So can you please share your mail ID, and please share a mail to fofkoiko.com, and we can share this redeem code to you. Okay, Radha. I hope you're hearing. So, moving on, we have two sessions coming up after our session. So, one is by FF Ahmedabad and one is by FF Pune. So, you can scan this QR for registering, or just visit www.ffworld2.com for securing your spots on these sessions. It will be starting in 10 minutes. So, thank you all. Thank you all for joining. We would love to hear your feedbacks. Just scan this QR and let us know your feedbacks, and so we can improve our sessions, next sessions. Okay. So, thank you all. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Charu. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.